Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's expert webinar in the Ask SMB Owners and in the Business Operations Group here on Alignable. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Todd Mitchell. And Todd is a retired U.S. military person with over 30 years of experience protecting confidential and secret information using cybersecurity best practices. After receiving his master's degree in cybersecurity policy, he was helping friends who owned their own business and realized there are no cybersecurity resources available unless you are a government agency or huge Fortune 500 company. Todd decided to make it his mission to help all small businesses and families by designing affordable cybersecurity solutions customized specifically for small business owners, micro businesses, entrepreneurs, and families. Like many of you, Todd runs his business out of the house and has had to use his own cybersecurity skills to protect his home router and encrypt the separate hard drive space for confidential data while also protecting his business from hacking. Wow, I can't wait for your presentation today, Todd. I'm totally geeked, so I'm going to hand it over to you and go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Beatrice. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad you could join. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. Everybody see that okay? All right. So today I want to talk about the cybersecurity tips for small businesses. Now, typically, cybersecurity as an industry has provided over the years has grown quite a bit, and now they have solutions where you can sign up and they have like managed solutions, they call it, and they will take care of all your cybersecurity needs for you. The problem is for a lot of entrepreneurs, micro businesses, small businesses under 100 employees, specifically real small, under 20, those solutions are not affordable or not attainable, because a lot of the big companies have requirements where you have to have at least 100 endpoints, they call it, which means computers. So you need at least 100 computers to use their systems or their software that they're using to control the cybersecurity on your network. And so I've taken it on as a mission in life to find solutions that small businesses and entrepreneurs can do when they're not really worried about a network as it is with a server stack and Cisco routers and things like that, because all they have is a home router or maybe a Comcast business class router that's in an office with 3 or 4 employees. So there are things that you can do to protect yourself. And today we're going to take a look at the 3 key learning objectives. Are going to be to identify your most valuable assets, how to protect your most valuable assets, and how to respond and recover from some kind of an incident to get you back in business at full operations as fast as possible. So the first thing we're going to look at is identifying your assets. Now, a lot of business owners have assets they don't really think about. Your names, address, phone numbers, email addresses of all your customers. If you have a logon for a shopping cart to create an account, you're also collecting username and passwords from those customers. A lot of times, depending on what industry you're in, if you're in the financial industry or the health industry specifically, but many others fall into this category too, you're also collecting the date of birth, place of birth, mother's maiden name, places of employment, children's names, even anniversaries sometimes. Innocent things, you think, oh, I'm going to ask everybody what their birthday is so I can send them a birthday card. Well, that's a great idea, except you now have collected personally identifiable information that's on all your employees, and that is something that is very valuable on the dark web. And unfortunately, information is the new currency, and hackers want to get a hold of it so they can sell it. The other things you might have is bank account numbers, social security numbers, credit card numbers. Again, same deal. These things are worth some money on the dark web, and they're also able to cause a lot of trouble in your customers' lives if this information gets out. You on the business side, you have legal documents, you have tax documents, you have accounting, payroll, employee files, medical records, possibly. And then you need to look at not just the information, but also look at the hardware and software. You got computers, mobile devices, routers. You possibly have some software you're using that you run your business out of. I know from a lot of the conversations going on the groups threads, there's, practically everybody is using some kind of a CRM to manage their clients. If that's something that is proprietary that you made yourself, or if you're paying for somebody else, but you are not doing the monthly payment, but you actually bought it up front, that software that you need to protect. QuickBooks, things like that. So you need to just identify what all the assets are that your business needs to stay operational. And the reason why you want to do that is so that you can take a look at how to categorize it. Now, I always like to recommend that everybody basically takes 4 buckets. You have a bucket for public. Those are, pictures you're going to post on Facebook or social media for your advertising campaigns. So if somebody steals a picture you were getting ready to post publicly anyways, it's not a big deal. Then you have sensitive, and that's not necessarily earth-shattering if it gets out, but you really don't want it to. You might have some trade secrets, maybe your employee files, or just private notes that you've made about different business affiliates you contacted. Those are the kind of things that you want kind of a need to know. Everybody doesn't need to know that information. There's only certain people that needs to see it. So you need to protect that with a little bit. And then you have confidential, and that falls into the category of a lot of the information we just said on the last screen, of personally identifiable information. And that needs to be kept in a non-readable state, which means typically you have to encrypt it. If you've got it on a piece of paper, when you destroy it or you're done using it, you need to shred it, but you have to have a crosscut shredder. You can't just use the cheap shredder that cuts it into strips, because then somebody could tape the pieces back together. And then the 4th category is regulated. Now, sometimes confidential and regulated are going to be the same depending on what industry you're in. If you're a doctor's office, you've got a bunch of personal information in the medical records, which is also regulated because Hipaa is telling you how to take care of it. If you're just a retail store, you don't necessarily have medical information, but you're still collecting financial information and customers, names, addresses, possibly their social security numbers or birthdays or something, depending on the situation. And you may not be regulated to do something about it, but you still need to take care of it confidentially. So that's why I split those into 4 buckets. And then what you do with those buckets is you protect each accordingly. So like I was saying, the public, we don't really worry about so much. You may want a backup of it because you've got a lot of hard work collecting all those pictures for your online store. But the sensitive data is something you're going to look at, like access controls. It goes back to what I was saying. To give you an analogy, you take a look at like a dentist office. My dentist does not need to know what my credit card number is. He's got a billing lady that sits in the back office. She needs to know my credit card number so she can charge me the bills and finagle with the insurance and the deductibles and things like that. But the dentist doesn't need to know my credit card number. On the same side, the dentist has all my personal patient history, and that billing lady doesn't need to know that. Neither does the receptionist. So even inside your office, you have certain people that need to know certain things to get the job done. And if you don't have a need to know, you should not be having access to that information. So you can't take all of your files on somebody and have it lumped as one big thing where you see everything or you don't see it at all. Sometimes you have to divide that up into separate pieces so that different people can see different pieces of that database without seeing the whole thing. And then obviously the easiest way to control access is through password protections and two-factor authentication and having the data encrypted so that if it is stolen, it's basically useless because nobody else will be able to read it. And now as far as the assets go, you're going to protect them by keeping that personally identifiable information in an unreadable state when it's being stored, when it's being transmitted. One of the big things that I see is email. That gets people into trouble a lot. I've talked to several people who are accountants and they're doing taxes and somebody will just get a hold of them, shoot them an email and say, hey, you're already doing my bookkeeping or whatever. You've got all my financial data. Here's my social security number. Go ahead and do my taxes for me. And you may encrypt it all on your computer, but they just send it to you through email. And a lot of emails will say, oh, well, we email everything encrypted. Yes, but do you have it encrypted on the email servers? On the back end, do they keep it encrypted when it's at rest? Or is it only encrypted in transit? An easy way to find out for yourself without having a lot of technical knowledge, ask your email provider if they're HIPAA compliant. If they have a publicly posted business associate agreement for HIPAA compliance, then they're encrypting the data at rest. If they don't, then you're going to be wondering, you're going to have to dig a little deeper and find out if they actually are. And in most cases, if they're doing what they need to do to encrypt that data all the way through, they're going to advertise that they're HIPAA compliant. And then another thing you want to look at is protecting your business data. And it's the same kind of a thing. The business data is going to be also needs to be encrypted. I suggest everybody has an encrypted folder on their hard drive. There's a lot of open source software that you can download that will do that. That is free. There's other programs that cost a couple of dollars that are a little easier to use. Sometimes, depending on which version of Windows, you can even get whole disk encryption for your entire computer. Although I still recommend having an actual folder encrypted. Depends on how many people are using your computer or have access to it. And then as far as the computers and the devices and themselves and the network, we're going to get to that in the next couple of slides. Does anybody have any questions?
I do. I have one question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Hi, Todd. I am wondering if you know if Gmail business is HIPAA compliant, since everyone tends to use that. That's a big one, right?
Yes, that is a big one. And that is an excellent question. And the answer is, it depends. So I love that answer, the old school answer. As a strict yes or no answer, yes. Gmail in, what do they call it now, Workspace or whatever it is, the paid version that costs $72 a year. That is able to be HIPAA compliant. It is, however, there is a little how-to list that you got to go through to make it that way. So it's not set up that way by default. So you have to go into your Workspace administrative console and do some things to make it HIPAA compliant. But it is possible to do it.
That is really good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie. I mean, not trying to drum up business or anything, but I looked at the list of instructions, and it is not for the beginning computer user. I can just tell you that right now. The stuff that they have you doing, you kind of have to know your way around a little bit, or you'll never figure out what the heck they're talking about.
Got
But
it.
it is possible to do it.
Good. Well, at least I know that, and it one can stay with that and then do the appropriate things. So thank you very much.
I have a question, Todd. How are you? Nice to see you again. Is Dropbox, or are you getting to that next? And then forgive me, I may have asked you about this in our past conversation some time ago, but is Dropbox HIPAA compliant at all? Because that's where I keep all my stuff.
Yeah, so actually the answer is going to be almost the same as it is for Google. Dropbox has the ability to be HIPAA compliant, but out of the box, it is not. There are a couple of things that you need to do to it. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but I do have I can find out the instructions. If you hit me up later, I'll figure out how to do it and let you know. But there is the ability to make Dropbox HIPAA compliant.
Okay, thanks. Thanks so much.
Okay, Stacy has a question. She says, is HIPAA only for medical?
Yes, technically HIPAA is for medical. However, it is also for anybody who is a third-party affiliate working with the medical community. So in other words, if you're an accountant and you're doing the bookkeeping for a doctor's office and you have access to their computers, you have to sign an agreement saying that you know that they're HIPAA compliant. And if you stumble across anything you're not supposed to see, you'll not do anything wrong with that information. And also you have to hold yourself to a level of compliance that means basically you have to be HIPAA compliant. So it can affect, it's not just doctors. When people think medical, they're thinking just, the hospitals and doctors' offices. It actually has a far reach. Like we were just talking about, Gmail had to make itself HIPAA compliant so that people could use their Google business email addresses. Dropbox is becoming files through Dropbox and things like that. So it's a far-reaching, way beyond just a medical practitioner, so to speak, and goes out into the. So if you do anything with the healthcare or have clients that are in healthcare, chances are you should be HIPAA compliant as well.
Okay. Thank you. And actually, I have a question. I was always curious about this. When you purchase something online and your browser says, leave your credit card in a wallet. Are those things safe?
That's kind of a big debate. I would say it's kind of more of a, I don't know. Personally, I do it. So I'm going to say they're safe. I think you have to just trust your browser. But in this day and age, I mean, Google owns every speck of information you've ever done on anything for the last decade or so anyways. So, I mean, if they want to just get access to your credit card information, you're already using that browser to punch it in the first place. So it's like if they wanted to steal it or something, they already would have. So I guess it's kind of one of those situations where it's a ease of use and makes your life simpler by letting them save it. I would say I haven't heard any major issues coming about from the major browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Edge. I haven't heard any major issues from those guys saving passwords and saving credit card information. So I would say it's okay.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right. Okay, so the identity piece, I kind of got ahead of myself and already went through most of this, the need to know passwords. Two-factor authentication, I touched on it. Basically, that's the piece, if you don't know what that is, that's that thing that annoys you every time you go to sign into your bank where they send you a text and you got to punch in the numbers. but that is a great way of making sure that you are actually the only one that can log into your bank under that username and password, because if anybody else tries it, you're going to end up with a text going, wait a minute, I didn't log in. Why are they sending me this code? So it's a good alerting system that something's going on. And it's also a good system because in the computer world, your identity is basically three things: something you know, something you are, and a third one that I can't think of off the top of my head. Something you know is like your password. Something you are is, with the two-factor authentication, it's going to be your. Sometimes they do biometrics. You got the fingerprints, and you've got the retina scans. You can do that on your phone, the facial recognition. And then the two-factor authentication is a third piece of that, because it now requires you to have something in your possession, like that phone, to get into the system, as well as just knowing a piece of information. So if somebody manages to find out some information about you and can answer the security questions, but they might not be able to actually be holding your phone in the hand, or the other way around. Maybe they stole your phone and they got your phone, but they don't know the answers to the questions. So it's kind of a double protection. And then, the password protected files and folders and encrypted files and folders. I already talked about that. And then the emails we were just discussing. A lot of people getting concerned about sending secure emails because they've got customers that are giving them social security numbers, birthdays, that kind of thing back and forth. So those are things that there are tools out there. I would look for, if you're not real deep into technology, just look for something that says it's HIPAA compliant, because then it's safe. As far as the data goes, basically it's the same list. I added VPN on there. A lot of times you can use a VPN to transmit your information back and forth. The way I refer to a VPN, my analogy is basically, think of the internet as a garden hose with a bunch of water going through it, and say there's a little window, and hackers can look through the window into the hose to see the water. And a VPN is a straw. So now you're shooting your water through this straw that's in this garden hose. So when they look through the little window into the hose to see the water, all they see is the straw. They can't see what's inside the straw. So that's how you're protecting your information and keeping it private, is by using the VPN to go through the straw. However, you still need to be aware of what happened to that information before you sent it, what happens to it after it gets to where it's going, because you still got the two ends that aren't protected by the garden hose. So it's just to be aware. It's a good tool, but it's not the only tool that you need. You still have to. And then another thing you want to make sure you're doing is making sure your old computer's hard drives are unreadable. They talk about you can't really delete anything. For those of us that are a little older, remember back when libraries actually had that, card deck over there, and had the card for each library book in it that told you where the book was. Think of the hard drive as the library, and think of, if you just took that card out and threw it away, nobody would ever be able to find that book. But the book isn't really gone. It's still sitting on the shelf, just nobody knows where it's at. And that's kind of what happens to your hard drive. You don't ever actually delete something off your hard drive. You delete the index that refers to where it's at, so nobody will find it again. So the only way to truly delete your hard drive is to literally rewrite something over the top of it 2 or 3 times to fill up every little space on your hard drive before you're totally. So in the military, they actually wipe it 7 times on top secret hard drives. They wipe it and rewrite it 7 times before they consider it good enough. Yep.
I got a question real quick, Todd. Going back to the VPNs. I actually use a software that's like $60 a year for, as soon as I boot up the computer, it basically VPN protects everything I do. Mm-hmm. But now that's on a Windows PC. Now I have a Mac, and I was told that I don't need this on a Mac. What's your take on that?
those are kind of wives' tales, I would say. That's a big myth. Everybody always thinks that they're much safer on a Mac than they are on a Windows computer. And to some extent, that could possibly be true, but it's only true because not enough people use Macs to make it worth a hacker's while. If there's 10 computers lined up and Macs are only like 2 of them and the other 8 are Windows, and you're going to learn how to hack into one of them, which one are you going to pick? You're going to pick the one with the 8, not the one with the 2. Does that mean that somebody somewhere didn't say, you know what, I'm going to go for the 2 because nobody else is picking on those guys? So they have been hacked. It's been several times. They've had all issues, and most of it is the same problems that Windows has. It's the same types of vulnerabilities, the same way that hackers get in. Like I said, the only difference is they're a smaller community, so they're not the huge target.
Great, thank you, because now I'm gonna put it on the Mac. Okay, awesome, thanks.
Kind of a related question, Todd.
Yeah.
What about iPhones? iPhones are prevalent everywhere.
Yeah, same answer. The only reason why iPhones don't get hacked as much as Androids is because there's not as many of them. The vulnerabilities are there. There's all of these, every operating system, including Windows, has derivatives back to the same sort of architecture. I mean, it's kind of like a cake. You can have a chocolate cake, you can have a vanilla cake, you can have an upside down cake. What is that one with the angel cake that you have to hang on the side of a Coke bottle or something to get it in midair? All these different cakes. But if you look at it, they all start with flour and water. I mean, they have the same, these operating systems all have the same vulnerabilities. So there's no secret magic just because it was made by one company and not another on whether they're protected. So you still need to do your due diligence to make sure that things are protected, regardless of whether you have an Apple. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So that was actually
Todd, I have one more question.
okay.
If you're changing slides, it's at the bottom of this slide. So should we trust like Staples and stores like that say they're going to shred out information when we turn in our old computers? Because I've turned in several old PCs and laptops and trusted them to destroy it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the problem. It is trust. You know, you go to Staples and they have shred day and you take all your stuff in there and you're thinking, okay, I'm hoping they're shredding this, you know, and for the most part, they probably do what they say they're going to do. But then every once in a while you're watching the 6 o'clock news and you see some guy in some small town on the other side of the universe somewhere or whatever that's getting arrested because he's selling, you know, a whole dumpster full of, you know, stuff that was supposed to be shredded and all he did was toss it out back, and, you know, people are reading through it. So it happens. It's you know, it's kind of like your customers with you. I mean, they're buying something from you. They're giving you your credit card number, hoping that you're not actually going to do anything with it other than charge them for the one thing you're supposed to be charging them for. So, you know, there's a trust in there that you just got to be hopeful that they're holding up their end.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so for devices, you want to set up spam filters, you want to set up antivirus software, run malware scans, and that, like I said, it doesn't really matter if you have an Apple, an Android, iPhone, a tablet, a Mac. It doesn't really matter. You need to do these things on every device you have. And the biggest thing is updating security patches. I put setting up a firewall, but it's basically verifying the settings are what they should be. Most of the smaller businesses, you don't really need a huge firewall, just the one that comes with Windows. It just needs to make sure that it's on and running and doing what it's supposed to do. Same thing with the security patches. You just have to make sure that your Windows updates are coming in as frequently as they're supposed to. Set it up, put it on automatic, or if it takes too long and it disrupts your workday, put something on a calendar reminder to remind you of, every Sunday afternoon when you're not working, to run all the updates so they're done by Monday morning when you start to work or whatever. And then the other thing you want to do is backups. So there's 3 kinds of backups. There's backing up a couple of files from your document folder or whatever and putting it on a thumb drive or an external hard drive. So that's backing up what I call your critical data. And then there's actually another kind of backup called a mirror or a clone. And that basically is cloning the entire hard drive, software, QuickBooks, all that stuff. Everything you had, your settings, your pictures, all of it, you're cloning the entire thing. So you could literally take this clone and go somewhere else and use it just like it was your computer. So then if something happens to your computer, all you have to do is just reinstall it with that cloned image, and you are back to the same way you were. Now, the reason why that is good to have is because if you, like you hear about in the news, all these ransomware attacks, this is how you know that the people who had the ransomware attack and ended up paying the ransom didn't do a good enough backup and have clones of their stuff. Because if they'd have been doing the clone backups, all they had to do was wipe their hard drives and reinstall the system from the clone, and they'd have been back up and running. They wouldn't have had to pay the millions and millions of dollars of ransom and be down for a week and a half. I'm thinking Colonial Pipeline last few months ago. And then the other thing you want to do is make sure that you have a good policy for thumb drives. If you have a lot of employees, maybe you want a no thumb drive policy because you don't want them bringing in something from somewhere else and sticking it in your computer, or you don't want to take a chance on them downloading all your trade secrets onto a thumb drive and running down the road and selling it to your competition. The other thing you need to do is protect your webcam. So this is basically a little baby hat, a little stocking cap that my wife knit. And I set it on top of my webcam. That's my webcam cover. So my webcam wears a little hat. There is no way to completely disable your webcam from being able to be activated other than unplugging it or covering it up physically. So I know everybody's seen some of the horror commercials or whatever with, where the memes floating around where, the Ring doorbells and the baby monitors and all this, talking to their kids, or, watching people, walking around their house when they didn't know they were being recorded and stuff. That stuff happens. I went out on the internet the other day and managed to get a full set of instructions that could easily be done by anybody that didn't even know that much about computers, because all you have to do is cut and paste it and stick it into a terminal window, and it gives you the ability to access webcams. There's even a website out there that you can pay a subscription to that shows you every webcam that they have hacked into and turned on all across America, and you can just pick which ones you want to watch. So it is a thing, and like I said, the only way to get around it is to cover your camera up. If you got a laptop, you get the little sticky one that slides back and forth, or you can cover it with a Post-it note or a little piece of duct tape or something. But if it's not in use, you might want to keep that thing covered up. Same thing goes with your microphone. Everybody's always talking about how, it's kind of a coincidence that you're discussing something, and then the next time you open your phone and go to Google, it's like suggesting that you search for what you just said in the other room a minute ago. That's because they literally were just listening to what you said through the microphone on your phone. It is totally happening all the time. If you actually read word for word their whole privacy acts, thing that you actually agreed to when you made a Gmail account and a Google account and use their browser, it's in there that they're going to do it. They pretty much say up front, yeah, we're going to do it. So anyway, there is a way around that. And the easiest way is take an old pair of headphones and cut the cord off, and you just got the little headphone microphone jack sticking out, and you just shove that in the hole in the side of your computer, and now it is defaulting to that microphone that doesn't exist, and it won't be able to pull in any information. You just got to remember to unplug it when you go on Zoom meetings, because otherwise nobody else will be hearing you either. And then there are ways to do this stuff with software that's very convoluted. You can spend tons of money trying to figure out how to do it, or buy some fancy software that does it for you. But I mean, the bottom line is reach in your drawer and grab a Post-it note and an old pair of headphones and just shove the things in and let them do it for you cheap. And then managing your employees' devices. This is something that you need to, depending on what your business is and how big your business is, you got half a dozen employees running around on their cell phones conducting business for you. Let's say you're a home health aide and you open your own little shop and you hire 4 or 5-year-old nurse friends, and they're running around to people's houses doing, sorting pills and doing, whatever nursing stuff as a service, but they're using their own phone and logging into certain software or whatever that you're using. You're on the hook for what they're doing, as far as like HIPAA compliance in the example I just gave. So you have to be very concerned about what they're doing with that information. If they're storing your customers' information, and then, depending on who this employee is, they're out bar hopping and leave that thing laying on a table in the middle of a bar or something on a Friday night, and it gets stolen, and now somebody else has got access to all that information. So there are what they call mobile device managers, that basically what it does is it makes a little miniature spot on their phone that is for you. And you can put the software in it. You can make it so they have to store all their information in it. But you control that little piece. So if you fire them, you just go into your mobile device manager software and hit a button, and it deletes that little piece off of their phone. And now they no longer have access to any of that information or that software. So it's just a safety for you, especially if, like I said, if you have employees that are using their own devices, or if it's a company-owned device and you just want to be able to track it. Networks, before I get into that, anybody have any questions?
Me again, one more question. Todd, should we be concerned about, I have the Apple Watch here, and a lot of times it just starts typing everything that I'm saying. I didn't call Siri, didn't ask him for anything. And you can see it spinning around, and it's just typing everything. Mm-hmm. Is that going somewhere? Like, is that something that we should be concerned about? Speaking of microphones? Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily going well. So how do I want to say this? The information that's out there that is being collected by any means possible, and sometimes it's for good reasons, sometimes it's for bad reasons. So if I was to go collect that stuff, you'd call me a hacker. But Google's collecting it, and they're like, oh, it's so convenient. I found another thing. I don't know if I can get it. It won't work now just because I'm on camera trying to tell you about it. But if I open my text message, like I'm going to go text to somebody, and it's got, on the bottom, it just says, the blank line to type into. And if I go on my computer and highlight something and right click on it and say copy, it just says copy to clipboard on here. And when I push to start typing, it's saved right there in the predictive text. All I got to do is tap this, and what I just highlighted on my computer now shows up on my text message that I could send to somebody. It's actually kind of convenient if you're trying to like cut and paste something to send to one of your friends in a text message, but it's actually kind of scary, because how the heck does my business phone know what I just did on my personal computer? Right. I mean, that's all Google right there. Got the whole world linked together. So my point is, they build it as a convenience. So I'm hoping that didn't go anywhere, but just to show up on my predictive text on my phone, but it is kind of scary. And that's why I said we need to protect our information. And at the end here, I'll get into a little bit more kind of some thoughts for you guys to have, some final parting thoughts. But yeah, I mean, that's a very valid question. And I honestly wish I had a better answer for it because it's one of them things you're like, is this really
Sort of feel like Big Brother is watching us,
yeah, the only difference is, George Orwell way back when thought Big Brother was going to be the FBI, and it turned out to be Google. Okay, so on your network, you want to look at basically a network for a smaller business. You don't have an IT closet with server stacks, so you're probably looking at your home router. There's still things you want to do, especially if you're at home working out of your living room on your home router, because you have all your business assets and you're asking me questions about how to be HIPAA compliant, but in the next room, your kid's on PlayStation doing who knows what with who knows who on the other side of the planet, and they're hooked to the same router. So you really need to be like on top of, making sure that you're segregating your network as much as possible. And I understand it's still the same physical piece of hardware, so there's not so much you can do. But there's a thing called a whitelist. What that means is basically you make a list of who's allowed in your router. And if they're not, it's kind of like, just think of it going to a State Department party at the White House or something. If you're not on the list, you ain't getting in. Then there's a blacklist, which is the exact opposite. If you're on the list, you're blacklisted, you're not coming in. And so those are ways of controlling the devices that come in and out of your network. I wouldn't recommend, they're hard to keep track of. So you might not need to worry about that for most people. I've had to set this up for certain people that I've had individuals that came to me for help that fell into the crazy stalker X has my passwords syndrome. And so we had to whitelist so that only certain devices could get on the router, because they kept having random devices showing up on the router that weren't supposed to be there. And then the bring your own device, we already talked about. The Internet of Things. So just out of curiosity, who here knows what the Internet of Things is? A show of hands. How many people know what the Internet of Things means? Okay, about half looks like. All right. So the Internet of Things is basically everything that's not your computer. That's a list to read off, but you're talking your refrigerator, because it hooks to the Wi-Fi to let you know when it's time to change the filters. All these, Wi-Fi baby monitors, Ring doorbells, TV, your Roku, your Fire Sticks, your Blu-ray players, and the stereo, and all kinds of stuff. Basically, it's anything that doesn't actually, the Fitbit you were just talking about, those are all considered Internet of Things. And the reason why they're in that category is because they don't actually think for themselves. They just need internet access. So they don't have to be part of your network per se. So what I recommend doing with the Internet of Things is, if you have a newer router, sometimes they have a network built in already for the Internet of Things, but a lot of times you can just put them on the guest network and have that stuff, because all it needs is internet access. So if you put them on the guest network, they can get to the internet, but they're not actually on the same network as you are with your stuff. And this even includes, your PlayStations, your gaming consoles, Xbox, that kind of stuff. Because you just have to ask yourself one big question. When's the last time you had a security patch download for your refrigerator? So do you want that on the same network that your computer's on? It doesn't need to see what's on your hard drive. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Google knowing everything. So the less people that can get to your stuff, the better. it's bad enough you got to put up with the Facebook and the Google just to get anything done, but you don't have to let your Whirlpool refrigerator take advantage of it. And then you want to set up your router. And I'm not talking about, when I say passwords, I'm not talking about your Wi-Fi password. I'm talking about the password to get into your router to do the settings of your router. If you haven't gone in and changed that, you need to, because I can tell you right now, if you Google what's the password to get into a Comcast router, you don't even have to open the link. It comes back in the description on the very first thing that says the password is high speed. If you've got a Linksys router, the password is admin. If you've got a Netgear router, the password is password. Verizon's the only one I know that actually gives you a unique password. And they stick it on a sticker on the side of the thing, but if you're holding it in your hand, I guess you're going to get in anyways. But my point to that is you have to go in and change it from the default password to something else, because if you don't, then somebody like me could get in there and put myself on a whitelist. So no matter what you do, I can always get into your network and then change the password so you can't even get in to unchange it. Okay, and secure your home or business Wi-Fi. Basically, that's the same type of thing. Same thing as your router. If you have a commercial router or a residential router, doesn't really matter. It's the same kind of rules apply. Okay, so the third thing we're going to discuss is recovering from incidents. So if something does happen, you think you're getting hacked, you see weird things showing up on your network, or pop-ups start coming all over the place on your computer, things like that. Basically, what you want to do is you need to have a plan ahead of time, hopefully, I guess, to back up a step. So, this doesn't hurt to have a plan, and it needs to be written down just for convenience, but it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I've actually I've got an Excel spreadsheet that if anybody wants it, I can send it out to them. That I just write down, what if this happens? This is what you got to do. Well, the first thing on this spreadsheet is you write down all those assets we were talking about at the very beginning. And then you write down who's in charge of those assets, who knows the passwords to them, and who's responsible for doing what. And then this is part of your response plan. So if a hurricane wipes out your house right now, who can get a hold of all your appointments tomorrow and tell them you won't make it? Or who can get all the deliveries you have going and get them shipped to Amazon, and get to the store on time or whatever, to open it, or who knows where the spare key is, or, that kind of thing. That's the stuff you need to identify. So, if something happens, your computer fries, God forbid you end up in an accident, get put in the hospital, but all your employees are standing around the parking lot going, well, who's got the keys? We could open right now, but nobody knows where the extra keys are, that kind of a thing. You just need to have a plan and know what to do, and test your plan every once in a while. Make a fun day out of it. Take a morning and just pretend, get a second computer out and say, well, we're just going to pretend that we lost all our data, and we're going to take whatever our backup is and put it on this other computer and see if it's good enough for me to get back to work. And then you'll know if your backups are actually just wasting electricity or if it's actually usable. And I have one more slide after this, which actually is good, because does anybody have any questions on anything before I switch to the next slide? Nope, good. Okay, so I slid this slide in the last minute because it became a hot topic. Last week I had somebody call me and ask me a couple of questions, and it was kind of one of those stump the stars kind of things, that they mentioned something that their insurance told them, so I had to go verify it. And sure enough, there's been some laws enacted in the last several months that nobody knows about. Actually, it wasn't a law, it was a rule on a law that already was there. But so on October 27th, whoops, I just went too far. I clicked a button, sorry. I'm used to using the mouse in my hand and clicking buttons. I keep going too far. Nope, it ain't gonna let me. All right. There we go. And I'll put the mouse away so I don't do that again. Okay, so the Federal Trade Communication announced in October 27th of 21, so just a few months ago, a newly updated rule. See, I like how they slide that in. So they didn't actually have to pass a law. They just took a rule that's been on the books for 20 years and changed a couple of words. That strengthens the data security standards that financial institutions are required to put in place to protect customers' financial information. So this was the Graham Leach Bliley Act that got passed way back in '99. That basically is the law that says if you sell insurance, you got to be licensed, and if you're sell a financial broker doing financial plans and selling stuff on the stock market and things like that, you have to be licensed. They tweaked the law to say that you had to have this information also had to be, the data had to be safeguarded. They did that about 4 years ago. I think it was in 2016. Well, now 6 months ago, they changed the definition of what a financial industry is. So most people think financial industry, you're like, oh, you're, stockbrokers and tax consultants and banks. And well, now they changed it to anybody that offers or sells any products, financial products or financial services, or loans or loan-like activities, or offers financial or investment advice, or sells insurance. So, and they put examples in there. So I kind of extrapolated out from their examples a few other businesses, but we're talking check cashing, payday lenders, mortgage brokers, personal property, real estate appraisers, professional tax preparers, and anybody who extends credit to somebody else. So those buy here, pay here car lots, your furniture store that has in-house financing, the rent to own places, those are all considered financial institutions according to this rule. Any finance or investment advice, this is like tax consultants, accountants. This is where I heard about it, was from an accountant actually. She told me their insurance company was requiring her to be Hipaa compliant, cybersecurity compliant before she could get her policy renewed. She had to prove that she had compliance. And it was like, I was like, I haven't heard of that. And I started looking into it and going, okay. So a couple months ago, they tweaked the rule. So yeah, tax consultants, business coaches, financial planners. I mean, this basically goes to, and this kind of leads back to my opening statement of the cybersecurity industry is not worried about people with 100 employees or less. But the problem is, if you're being mandated by Congress as a tax consultant that you got to be cybersecurity compliant, and you're just one person working out of their living room, and you don't have 100 computers and can't afford $10,000 a month to get Cisco's premium plan to get, full compliance with the latest government standards, what are you going to do? So that's kind of where I come in, of trying to help people become compliant that need to be mandated by Congress to do it, but there's no other solution for them. So I actually spent the better part of last week calling some places to see about getting some help for this lady. And I had 6 of them, and 4 of them just straight up told me no way. They didn't mess with anybody that didn't have at least 500 what they call endpoints, which means computers. 2 of them said 250. The one said, well, we're willing to work with small businesses. We could go down to 100. And I'm like, it's 1 employee. And they're like, sorry. And they said, well, we could probably go less than 100, but we're going to charge you for 100 anyways. So $100 a computer isn't a bad price. That's what they advertise. But you got 100 computer minimum. So that's $10,000 a month. And if you only got 1 computer, they're still going to charge you the whole 10,000. And I'm just shaking my head going, and you're advertising that you work with small businesses. I don't think so. But all right. So anyway, that's the end of my presentation. I just wanted to throw that out there because you might hear about this rule in the future, and that's one of those things that, you know, you hear about this and you're like, oh, this is it doesn't affect me. I'm not in the financial industry. And then you actually need to look at the way the FTC interpreted that law, and it's called the Safeguard Act, that, or the Safeguard Rule, that piggybacks off the GBLA, and that now includes like half the small businesses out there with the categories they gave. It's pretty wide reaching. So.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Todd. We have 5 minutes left, but before we go on, I'm going to drop Todd's information into the chat. He is here on Alignable, and I see a lot of people requesting for him to email and all this. He's been presenting. So do me a favor, connect with him and ask him in the message for mailing what he had offered. You can ask him questions, but also if you liked his presentation, give him a recommendation on his profile here on Alignable. I know he would very much appreciate that. And Todd, I apologize, I neglected to say that you are the owner of cybersecurity for biz.com. And again, find him on his profile, but this was such a good talk. Thank you so much. I know it's been appreciated by looking at all the comments in here. So very valuable information. And I just wanted to open up the floor in case someone still has one last question.
I'll put my thing in the chat real quick too. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Great. So there's his website and everything. And so if anyone has a question, feel free to unmute yourself, maybe raise your hand by using the reaction button on the bottom. So just in case there is a lot of questions. But I think you covered a whole lot of ground. There's a lot of things to think about. So I highly recommend connecting with Todd and getting the document where you have the checklist on what you need to check, and then spend about 2 weeks implementing all that stuff.
And I know there was a lot to digest. The biggest thing you need to remember is human behavior causes 92% of the data loss. It's you having bad passwords, you leaving passwords laying around, you sharing accounts with 3 or 4 of your friends because you're too cheap to pay for your own. It's you spilling a cup of coffee on your hard drive or your computer or your laptop. That's what gets all the data lost, not necessarily these hackers sitting in a foreign country pounding away on Linux code in the middle of the night. That's not really how you lose your data.
Yeah, thank you so much for recapping that. Excellent presentation. Really appreciate it. So many people saying thank you. Great presentation in the chat here. So again, thank you so much, Todd. And just for you, we got 1 minute left. This presentation will be available online. So it will be in the right-hand side of the business owners group and business operations group and the Ask SMB owners group. So you can replay it and find the places that you want to listen over again. And then in the meantime, again, reach out to Todd. Thank you very much. And we're going to close it. There's no more questions, and hope to see you guys next week. Next week, we're going to have a legal expert on, going to talk about legal documentation, offers, agreements, and so on. So
awesome.
Great. Yeah. So thank you, Todd. Everyone, please reach out to him, and have a great rest of the day.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Todd.